Hi everyone, welcome to this month's Real English video. In these videos I take you around my favourite parts of Edinburgh and tell you about its history and culture, and today we're doing a Halloween special, which is why I've come to one of the spookiest places in Edinburgh, the old Carlton Burial Ground. Think you know how to celebrate Halloween? Think again. I'm going to tell you all about our Scottish traditions, and they don't involve pumpkins or trick-or-treating. So Halloween has its roots right here in Scotland. There's mentions of the festival in Celtic literature from over 2,000 years ago, and it comes from the pagan celebration of Samhain. Roughly translated means summer's end, which was a harvest festival. This harvest festival celebrated the end of summer and the coming of winter, or the end of light and the coming of darkness. It's also, of course, an autumn festival, which is why we associate the colour orange with Halloween. Samhain, being about the end of the light and the coming of the dark, also heavily featured fire, like many other of our pagan festivals in Scotland. As with our other festivals, it was, of course, a chance to have a really great time with your neighbours, but it was also to make offerings to the gods to protect crops and cattle. Another aspect of the beliefs of this pagan festival was that of the goddess of winter, the crone. The crone, or the old woman, symbolised wisdom, change and the turning of the seasons. In later Scottish literature and beliefs, she would come to be associated with witches and fairies, and that's one of the reasons we associate the holiday of Halloween with witchcraft. This night of the changing of the seasons was also believed to be the night when the veil between the human world and the spirit world was lifted. And that, of course, meant that your family might come back to visit. So a common tradition was to set an extra setting at the table in case they wanted to join you in your evening meal. Like I said before, fire was a big part of this celebration, with communities making big bonfires to celebrate the festival. It was also traditional to put out the fire in your own home and then relight it using fire from the community bonfire. What that did was help reinforce community spirit. Fire was also used as a very useful and scientific way to find out if your marriage would be successful. A nut was thrown onto the fire, and if the fire hissed, that meant that the marriage would not be good. But if it made no noise, you'd have a successful one. Samhain was also a great night to find out what your future partner would be, but it wasn't easy. You had to go out into a field, pull out a stalk of kale closing one eye, and the height of the stalk would determine the height of your partner, and if there was a lot of soil on it, it would tell you if he or she would be wealthy. As well as a communal fire, there was also communal eating, and one of the things that you would traditionally eat was something called a Halloween cake. So inside that cake there would be a ring, a button and a coin, and each one meant something different. If you found the ring, you would be the first one to marry. If you found the coin, you would be rich. But if you found the button, you would never marry at all. Apples also play a big part in traditional Halloween food, and that's because in the Celtic culture, apples were sacred. Some common things related to Halloween and apples are, of course, toffee apples, but we also play games such as Dukin for apples in Scotland, and that's where you put lots of apples in a bowl and you have to take them out with your teeth. Another traditional game we play at Halloween in Scotland is called treacle scones. That's where you hang a scone or some kind of cake covered in a thick syrup from a string, and you have to eat it blindfolded and with your hands tied behind your back. As you can imagine, it gets pretty messy. Of course, there was no Haribo or fun-sized Snickers bars back in those days, so some traditional treats you would get were things like nuts or oranges or raisins, because those were real special delicacies that you couldn't get usually. In fact, back in the 80s, when I was growing up, on Halloween we were very often given monkey nuts, satsumas and raisins as our special treats. I don't know if kids nowadays would be very happy about that. And a really popular party snack here in Scotland are sausage rolls, although they were illegal to be served on Halloween for nearly 200 years. This was because of the 1735 Witchcraft Act. Pork bones were often associated with spells that witches cast, and that's why you were not allowed to consume any pork on the 31st of October. It wasn't repealed until 1950. Now, of course, it's fine. Halloween was a dangerous time for kids because people thought that the evil spirits out and about at night might come and try and take the kids away or harm them. So, in order to trick the spirits, what people would do was dress up children as little ghouls and ghosts themselves. And this is where the tradition of dressing up in Halloween comes from. But in Scotland, put those Spider-Man or Elsa from Frozen costumes away. Because we were trying to trick the spirits, it's traditional here to dress up as something scary. That means plenty of vampires, witches, ghosts and ghouls. When I was wee, you definitely wouldn't be able to go to the supermarket to pick up your Halloween costume either. They were mainly homemade and very often made out of black bin bags. Trick-or-treating is something else which is a modern aspect of Halloween, which comes from the States, not from Scotland. Here we don't go trick-or-treating, we go guising or galoshing. It's similar, you go door to door, but you don't say trick or treat, you do something called doing a turn. And doing a turn means some kind of performance. So you might say a joke, do a magic trick, sing a song or do a dance. You can also forget about your pumpkins. We're much more hardcore in Scotland, and instead of the easy to carve pumpkin, traditionally in Scotland we carve one of these. This is a neep or a turnip, and I can guarantee it is significantly harder to get through. In fact, it's pretty common to maybe lose a thumb in the process. Although definitely trickier to carve, I will also say that a neep lantern is much spookier too. When the Scottish settlers moved from Scotland to North America, they took a lot of these traditions with them and of course adapted them. Instead of using neeps, they'd use pumpkins. Over time, the way that Halloween was celebrated in the United States and in Canada changed quite a lot from the traditional roots in Scotland, with a much more community and fun carnival feel. Then, of course, through Hollywood and films and TV shows, the American version of Halloween has been the one that's come to dominate. And it's definitely affecting Scottish traditions as well. If you go into a shop now, you see lots of adverts for trick or treat. There's plenty of children that dress up as their favourite superhero now instead of a spooky ghost or ghoul. And there are a lot more sweeties rather than monkey nuts going into their Halloween bags. There are still some hardcore traditionalists like me. In my house, we definitely carve a neep, not a pumpkin. Well, we carve a neep and a pumpkin. And there are still big celebrations for Samhain by the Beltane Festival in Edinburgh. They do an incredible parade and fire festival up at the top of Calton Hill. I'm optimistic our Halloween traditions will continue, and I hope you choose some of them to celebrate with this year as well. But until next time, have an amazing Halloween and see you soon. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another video. See you really soon.